One of the most enduring archetypes of the Old West, of course, is the gunfighter or gunslinger. And in many ways, the archetypal version of the gunfighter is kind of well-dressed, sophisticated. He engages in other risky behavior too, like maybe he's a gambler on top of being a gunfighter. I think that this archetype is heavily based on the real-life personage, of course, of Doc Holliday, who was a Southern gentleman, well-educated, sophisticated, reasonably well-off, had made a living as a dentist for a while, had gone to school and graduated at a young age as a dentist, but when he contracted tuberculosis, he moved out west to try and live longer because of the dry air, which he did. He was originally given less than a year to live, and he lived for many years, although he did die young, and tuberculosis did kill him. But he realized that he was good at gambling as well, and was good at gunfighting. He had a reputation as a serious gunfighter, although he probably killed less people than he's reputed to have killed. However, although the outfits that I've designed for today are kind of based on that archetype, I don't want to talk about Doc Holliday because he's extremely well known. If you want to know about him, you can go read about it himself, or better yet, even though it's not a biography and it doesn't say everything about him, you can just watch Tombstone, and that gives you a very very good peek into his character and the character of the archetype in particular. There's another famous gunfighter called Clay Allison that I want to talk about. He probably was not as sophisticated and not as suave and urbane as Doc Holliday or the archetype, but he's just a fascinating character to me. He was born in kind of rural Tennessee. His father was a Presbyterian minister. He enlisted to fight in the Civil War, but was sent home after a few months because of pre-existing head injury or something like that. They said rendered him unfit for service, although later he re-enlisted and fought in the cavalry with Nathan Bedford Forrest. After the war was over, he was back at his home, and a occupying Union troop decided that he wanted to simply just take possession of their family farm or plot of land or estate or whatever exactly it was that he lived on. So he kind of showed up and just was going to kick them out and take it. Obviously, Clay and his brothers resisted. A vase was broken that had been an anniversary gift from his father to his mother, and eventually it's not clear exactly what happened, but eventually Clay Allison shot this Union trooper. Whether that's the reason, or whether they just decided that, under the occupying and spiteful Union Army, there's no way that a Southerner is going to prosper. He ended up moving to Texas, took with him both of his brothers, his sister, and his brother-in-law. Eventually all came as well, and they became ranchers. In fact, in West Texas and New Mexico. Clay Allison was also involved in the Colfax War on the side of the homesteaders. In fact, he had kind of a bit of a beef with a rough fellow on the other side of that conflict. And it's not really a war, of course, but that's what they call it. This other guy invited him to dinner, and he came and ate with him. And over the course of dinner, this other fellow tried to draw his gun and shoot him, but his gun kind of, I guess, binded on the table. He hit the table and didn't get it up very fast. And Clay Allison shot him dead, drew and shot him. Later, he was asked why he would go to dinner with somebody who he knew was likely going to try to kill him. And his comment was, didn't think that it was right to send a man to hell on an empty stomach. Clay Allison and his brother also got in an altercation in Colorado. A sheriff's deputy kind of told them in a saloon that they couldn't have their guns in town, and they refused to give up their guns. They left the saloon, but the sheriff's deputy went outside to follow them and continued to harass them, and in fact drew on them, and Allison shot him dead as well. And although he was originally arrested, he was later acquitted, because of course it was determined that the other guy had drawn on him first. So there's some other stories about Allison. I guess I don't need to tell them all. He's an interesting character, and I encourage you to look him up, because he's emblematic of, although also at the same time a little bit exaggerated version of what the Old West was. On his gravestone, curiously, in Pecos, Texas, it says Clay Allison. He never killed a man who didn't need killing. And that's just kind of the way it is in the Old West, right? I think that the lawlessness and violence of it is fantastically overrated, but at the same time, I think it's really interesting that even though it's exaggerated, some of it did happen. It really was kind of a wild place sometimes. Anyway, my gunfighter outfits are largely based on black, often pinstriped clothing elements. In order to add some color to that, I usually tried to use some red, and I tried to kind of focus on some of the fancier stuff, but not too fancy. This is still the Old West. This isn't some manor in the city back east. This is guys running around in boom towns out west and other places like that. So that's kind of how I did it. I used a lot of elements that I kind of just had laying around, if you will, for quite some time, and hadn't ever figured out exactly what I wanted to do with them. And some of the outfits as always work better than others. The one that I originally started, the hot weather version of it, is the one that I created before I decided that I was going to even do this video series, and that I was going to have hot, average, and cold versions of the same theme. Before even I had done that, I had created the hot weather outfit and had it saved and had worn it here and there for a while, and I called it just the fancy gunfighter, because that was the concept, and I decided that the concept needed a full treatment. Another thing that I did that maybe is a little bit interesting is, for all of these outfits, I did not use an offhand holster. I don't like how in Red Dead Redemption the offhand holster is reverse draw instead of standard draw, and I think if you're going to have two holsters, they should both be down the side of your leg like the main one is. I don't know why it's kind of in front. That would actually be extremely difficult to draw your offhand weapon, assuming you're right-handed, of course, the way that it's situated. I think it's kind of a dumb design, and not a lot of people in pictures I've seen of the Old West seem to have used that outfit on their rigs if they carried two guns. But be that as it may, I didn't do the offhand holster. I kind of just went with a one-gun holster. Part of that is because it allows the coat to hang normally on that side in the front, and part of that is because I just think it's a little bit more archetypal that way. It just looks a little bit more like kind of what you expect the gunfighter to look like, the classic, gunfighter who has just made some sophisticated insult to somebody who's given him grief, and then he slowly and calmly and coolly walks out in the street, flips back his coat and draws and fires. And that's kind of the look I'm going for. Hope you like these outfits. I'll just let the rest of the video run, and I'll show them to you, and we'll let it go at that. See you next time.